to the She's a 10 times 5 show with hosts Laurie Jabbar and Michelle Emick. We're bringing public figures, subject matter experts, and other accomplished guests to the Studio 50 table to serve you up the best tips, tricks, and key takeaways that all us midlifers want to know about. Okay, time to join us for some times 5 fun. Let's go.
Okay, all you Ten-ers. Laurie and Michelle are bringing you a topic that everyone is talking about: the growing issues with border control, illegal immigration, and the overwhelming impacts from the influx of undocumented migrants. Immigration issues have been stated as the number one issue in America. And who better to chop it up with the ladies in Studio 50 than someone who has planted herself on the front lines for the past year? Cue in Southwest NewsNation correspondent Allie Bradley. Allie has been working in television news since 2010 and was primarily an anchor until she went independent as a journalist in 2021. For the last year, Allie could be found covering the U.S. southern border, working alongside her carefully cultivated sources to bring light to the issues impacting so many right now. Allie's desire to get answers to her questions led her to walk with a caravan of nearly 6,000 people for 2 weeks in southern Mexico. Allie has also covered the horrific school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, homelessness in Seattle, and the Afghanistan evacuation and Operation Allies. We're adding to and weighing in on the conversation we are all having. Let's go. Look as good as you feel with great skin made simple. Welcome to the all-in-one skincare system created by world-renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Amir Karam. There's no need to look anywhere else. The Karam MD Trifecta packs more than 20 state-of-the-art ingredients into an easy 3-step system that addresses all aspects of aging for your best skin ever. Use discount code SHE'S10, that's SHE'S10 for 20% off your purchase. Let's go.
Okay, welcome, Allie. We're so glad you're with us today.
So glad to be here, you guys. Obviously, the border, it never stops, never a dull moment, but so glad to take some time to have the conversation.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we want to dive into. You know, we're talking about immigration, we're talking about the border. Everyone has an opinion. You know, there's a lot of finger pointing going on. The media is divided. So we're opening it up with just about as, basic as it gets with the question: what is really going on at our southern border?
Well, I wish I could say that it's really simple and really easy in black and white. And that's what I try to stick to when it comes to our reporting and our facts. But there's a lot of nuanced things happening down here, and every sector and every area of the border is different. There's not, you talk to any law enforcement individuals and they'll say there's not one paintbrush swoop that you can do along the southern border and fix everything, because there are so many issues. And I'll say I've been covering this exclusively for about 2.5 years. I've been with NewsNation for about 1.5 years now. And 2.5 years ago, you would be so hard pressed, you guys, to find a single individual who would tell you they were here to work or that they were here alone, that they didn't have any family here. The reality is now, the vast majority of the people that I'm running into, they're here to work and they're here alone. So the things have shifted a lot. I don't know if the conversations have shifted or if the types of people who are coming over here has shifted. But the reality is, a lot of people I talk to say they're leaving nothing, trying for something. In worst case scenarios, they're going to go back to nothing. And they really are only taking what's being given to them right now. Under this administration, crossing the border in any way, shape, or form and claiming asylum is legal. And the Biden administration did try to kind of funnel those individuals to the ports of entry to make a legal pathway. But a federal judge said, no, that's not humane, because sometimes they don't have access to that. Sometimes they can't make it to a port of entry. They have to be able to claim asylum anywhere that they can cross, basically. So that's why we're still seeing people crossing through the rivers in Eagle Pass by the hundreds, forming human chains, using ropes to get across the frigid water. It's 50 degrees out here. I know that's probably not cold for a lot of people, but it is down here in Texas, and crossing the Rio Grande is a brutal task to do. And then you've got Lukeville, Arizona, that's being inundated as well. And those individuals are crossing through holes that are being cut in the border wall by human smugglers. And those individuals, too, are having the same right to asylum as the people that come across through the ports of entry. And once they hit U.S. soil, it becomes a federal immigration issue. That individual has to be apprehended by Border Patrol, and that individual has the right to go through those asylum proceedings. But again, the vast majority of the people that are crossing, they don't qualify for asylum. I just met a young man from Morocco, a 20-year-old down in Lukeville. I sat in the dirt with him for a while, and he said he respects America and respects the rules. And I said, well, you did break the rules coming in, because you can use the CBP1 app. That is a legal pathway. And he goes, well, no, not exactly. And I said, well, you probably wouldn't be sitting in the dirt right now if it were a legal, pathway. But the thing is, they can do that right now. They can sit there and wait to be processed by Border Patrol with the hopes that they're going to be released into the country. And that individual himself was released within about 3 days. He already made it to New York City. He wants to work legally, but the reality is he can't. So while his asylum case plays out until it gets adjudicated, he's stuck sitting in New York without any financial means really at all, because he says he paid $7,000 to get here. And that's kind of where it ends for him. So now he needs help, and his case is not the only one like that.
I was curious that you just mentioned that, because I wanted to know who is supporting their trips. I mean, there's gotta be a lot that goes into getting here.
And a lot of them will tell you they save up. A lot of the individuals, the men from Africa that I've met, they said, you don't just come here if you don't have any money. You have to save up. It takes time. And then some of them don't have any, they say that they barely spent any money to get here, but then that means they're likely in debt to the cartel, in debt to the human smugglers in some way, shape, or form. And then they have to come over to the United States and can't work legally, but they have a debt to pay. And so that ends up, we're seeing more and more people who are undocumented involved in smuggling cases, doing nefarious things to get money, because they have a debt to pay, whether that's they need money for rent or whether they owe a human smuggler.
Yeah, I was curious what happens. So they make it here, and then what? They wait to go through processing.
It depends on which way they come in. Say they come in and they self-surrender. That's the big groups we're seeing, right, by the hundreds. That's self-surrendering. So what they're doing is they're giving themselves up to be arrested. That's what an apprehension is. It's an arrest, basically. And because they're here undocumented, Border Patrol has to apprehend them, has to take them into custody, because once they're on U.S. soil, they become the federal government's responsibility as an arrest, right? They're here illegally, so they have to be taken into custody. Some of these individuals, though, are coming over, and what happens is they get an initial process screening out in the field. They have these handheld devices, the Border Patrol agents do. It'll scan their face, and if they have any immigration infraction, that will pop up. But it gives them basically the bare minimum out in the field, and then they'll transport them to a processing facility. So here in Eagle Pass, they'll transfer them to a soft-sided facility called Firefly. And there they will go through additional screenings. It depends on what country they're from. It depends on if they have criminal history, all of those things. They'll go through that additional screening. And from there, if they are released, which the majority are, because they're getting into what DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says are removal proceedings under Title VIII, but because they have a right to claim asylum and their cases need to be adjudicated, they then will be released into the country with a notice to appear. That might be, one guy just came through Eagle Pass 3 days ago from Cuba. He is already in Miami, and his notice to appear is in December of 2027. The cases, the court cases are backlogged. There's not judges down here. Alejandro Mayorkas had said after Title 42 ended, they were going to surge judges down here to kind of mitigate that backlog. That has not happened. Those judges never materialized down here. So the court cases continue to pile up. And those individuals will basically be released into the country. Again, they can't legally really do anything while their cases play out. I know that there are some talks in allowing them to have work permits and things like that, but opponents to that say that that's a magnet or a pull factor that encourages more people to come who are economic migrants, who would in turn be able to legally work. And so it's a push-pull. It literally is, everything has a reaction to it. So you really have to think of the long term and the long game here, and try to understand why they're leaving their countries in the first place. Right now, we have a surge in Arizona that is African men, for the most part, from Guinea. So, what's going on in Guinea right now, where all of these people are leaving? And so those are factors there. But then if you look at people that come in and they're trying to be undetected, we went out with the DPS brush crew on Tuesday night, and what they do, they're an elite team that goes out and tracks individuals who are trying to remain undetected. These people will cross the river. They will basically get a pin drop from a human smuggler, whoever guided them that way. And that, because the groups don't just happen to be together, right? There's no coincidence. Everything's orchestrated by the criminal cartels. And so these groups will come over together. They don't know each other, but they will get a pin drop and they will end up in a ranch traversing through private properties. And this human smuggling driver will be recruited off of Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, but they're usually US citizens. They will get a pin drop as well. And that's usually like a gas station parking lot or something where they hang out for a little bit. When the group starts to approach where they need to be, they both get the same pin drop and link up on the side of the road, and it's off to the races. And it literally becomes a pursuit, and that local law enforcement get involved in, and we're seeing more and more pursuits happening. And they're dangerous for the communities, and they're dangerous for law enforcement. They're dangerous for the drivers and the migrants involved as well. So that's what the goal is for those people trying to remain undetected, those people on the ranches. We were able to actually apprehend 8 different illegal immigrants in the brush while we were out in Maverick County. And they were all from different countries. They were from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And one guy that we talked to is 20 years old, and he said he had family in North Carolina and he was going there to work. But once they got arrested in Texas, it's a little different because Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star has allowed for local law enforcement to arrest for criminal trespass. So that is, while that person is undocumented, generally local law enforcement would have no right to any kind of arrest because it is a federal issue. Immigration goes with the feds. It does not have any local law enforcement can't do anything with that. And
Wow.
so Governor Greg Abbott made it so that if they can prove they're on property and they're not allowed to be, it doesn't matter if they're here undocumented or if they're an American citizen, they're going to get charges for criminal trespassing. So all 8 of those individuals would not be turned over to Border Patrol. Instead, they would face criminal charges for trespassing. And that would in turn ruin any of their chances for legal asylum in the country in the future, because they have that conviction on their record. And so Governor Abbott is trying to kind of cut off some of those pull factors, right? He's trying to make consequences where he says the federal government has kind of come up short.
Okay, so 3 things, just coming from the lens of a citizen. And I live in San Diego, just to give you reference, okay?
Mhm.
Right. So we don't have, and if you have a kid and you try to go into a children's hospital on a weekend, especially, it's inundated with undocumented, illegal. Okay, we don't have the infrastructure to support them. I worry about disease, and I do worry about this criminal aspect that you're talking about. So, from your standpoint, 2.5 years of doing this, how concerned are you with all of that?
I mean, it is a concern, right? I mean, the number one, our healthcare systems are struggling. Yuma Regional Medical Center is the only hospital in the Yuma area, and they're sitting on $38 million in uncompensated migrant care because American hospitals don't turn people away, right? You even go on the websites in New York and they're like, you're entitled to medical care. Nobody's going to turn someone away who's sick or who needs help. And so that part is hard because the local people then are impacted, right? The people who live there and have lived there, like you mentioned, can't get care. I know in Yuma Regional Medical Center, they had to kind of move some C-sections that were scheduled, things like that impacted people in that area. And again, I mean, they talk about the threat of having to close down because they aren't being reimbursed. The federal government is, I think he, at that point, about a month ago, he told me they got reimbursed about $9,000 of that $38 million. So when you have a non-for-profit hospital like that, they're struggling to stay afloat. And what does that mean for the Yuma community? You speak about San Diego specifically. There have been over 50,000 undocumented immigrants that have been released on the streets there over the last couple of months, according to the county supervisor, Jim Desmond there. So you guys are certainly feeling it in San Diego as well. Now, the criminal aspect, I mean, I see these families come across, right? I've walked with a caravan. I've talked to a lot of people, and I see the families come across, and I try to give people grace, right? I try to understand what they must be going through. I try to understand, yeah, they want a better life. And again, they're only taking what's being given to them. So how can I say that legally, if I was in a different country and saw all of my friends and everyone else coming over, would I try to do the same? I don't know. If they were seeing everybody walk into New York and get hotel rooms, I don't know. But the messaging is certainly wrong there, because we just talked to that guy from Morocco who can't figure out how to work and he has nowhere to live, right? So the messaging is a problem, but the criminal aspect is concerning to me in the sense that I spend a lot of time in areas that people don't. I go to a lot of the areas where you're not seeing groups of 300 people self-surrendering. I stand in Naco, Arizona and watch 15 men in camouflage jump the wall in 15 minutes using ropes and ladders, and Border Patrol is nowhere to be found. I stand in Nogales, Arizona, which is basically the fentanyl superhighway, and watch 5 men from Mexico come out of the bushes and help one individual scale 2 walls, and then they all retreated. And I talked to Border Patrol and they all go, oh, he was a bad guy who paid a lot of money to get in that way. And those things do keep me up at night because we don't know who they are. And the reality is, even in the big groups, some of those criminals are able to use the big groups as a Trojan horse. And the sad reality, and even Christopher Wray, the FBI director, admitted that there are gaps in our intel. Sector chiefs, as well as Border Patrol chiefs, have straight up said that our systems are only as good as the systems we have to vet them against. And right now we're vetting these individuals against an empty hard drive, because you have to think about where a lot of these individuals are coming from. You can't even imagine, you can't expect them to even have viable medical records, let alone sharing their criminal histories with these individuals with a country that they don't necessarily play well with, right? We have a lot of people coming from special interest countries, and we don't have access to their databases. So when I told you guys about that initial screening, if nothing pops up in that, and then they go for biometrics in the soft-sided facility, which do include fingerprints and a DNA swab as well. If nothing ticks on those things, if it doesn't flag in Interpol or on a terrorist watch list, then they're released into the country. But say they came over with no documents. I even pressed the retired Yuma sector chief and said, what happens if a guy comes over and says, my name's Bob and I'm from Venezuela, but he's actually Bob from Syria, but he left his documents on the other side? What happens? Do we go and talk to the consulates? Do we go and dig around? Do we go and demand, some kind of documentation? And no, you basically have to take his word for it that he's Bob from Venezuela, unless there is proof otherwise. And so those things do concern me. Again, the family units coming across, it's interesting because we do have a family expedited removal program right now. And the families from certain countries, mostly the Northern Triangle, like Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, those ones are the ones getting ankle monitors right now. Not the 8 men from Syria that I met in Lukeville, not the 400 single adult men from Guinea, but families from the Northern Triangle are being removed and being tracked. And
why is that happening?
I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I've questioned that many times, and I said I would arguably believe that America would rather have single adult men from special interest countries with ankle monitors than families here, with their kids. And that's just from Allie being a human. I don't know why that's happening. And it's kind of, I think, negligent in a sense for us to believe everyone's here to hold hands with us and sing Kumbaya, right? Not everybody has good intentions. Not every American has good intentions. So to believe that a group of 800 people are all solid and free and clear, I think there's some irresponsibility there, with us just sometimes being a little bit naive.
Yeah. And then, the other element is disease, right? I mean, we went through COVID, and I just think that, we have a major healthcare crisis in general, nationally. And I just feel like if we don't manage some of these things a little bit more acutely, it's going to be a major crisis. And
yeah, it could be. When I was with the caravan, and since then, when the Del Rio crisis happened, there were confirmed diseases like dengue fever, tuberculosis, hepatitis. Those things were very real, but it's not something that is openly talked about. And I don't know if it's because it kind of stokes fear, because it's not spreading amongst people. So it's not, we shouldn't kind of put it out there to scare people. But when the Del Rio crisis was happening and there were 15,000 plus people, mostly from Haiti, underneath that bridge, there were several confirmed diseases, including, like I mentioned, tuberculosis, HIV, hepatitis. Those things we did report about that. But again, they're coming over here. A lot of them, they don't go through extensive medical screenings unless they show signs or need them. So they're not being screened like that on the ground level. They're ending up in communities like yours in San Diego and going to the hospital. And at that point, hopefully it didn't spread to anybody. But when COVID was happening, it was really interesting because I would talk to the NGOs and I'd say, what if somebody has confirmed COVID and they like get on the bus with a whole group of people that don't? And they said, well, we just have them double mask. And I was like, okay, so I don't know what the answer is to how to mitigate that and how to fix that. Some more stringent medical screenings probably on the ground level is good. But here's the thing. If someone goes to the hospital, they are required to be escorted and supervised by a federal agent. And as you guys know right now, we don't have the resources to do that. So a lot of times, it's just not working out the way that it should be. They don't have the manpower to take people to the hospitals and to sit there and, so-called babysit them. And some of them are. So, you've got high up federal agents that are sitting there in the hospital room waiting for somebody, to be cleared because they're not the hospital's responsibility unless they're released from federal custody.
Wow. You know what I want to ask you, Ellie? I know you have stats and all the, the figures. How many immigrants are coming in daily? What are we looking at?
So daily I haven't gotten yesterday's numbers yet, but Tuesday alone, there were over 10,000 across the southern border. We saw a day, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where we exceeded 12,000. And so those are astronomical numbers.
And this is like undocumented, like they have not gone through the protocol of proper entry.
Correct. There are some that come through the ports of entry. I would say, I believe it's like 8,900 came through Border Patrol. So they're coming through the holes, they're coming between the ports. That's what we say are entering illegally. And then there, a little over 1,000 that actually use the CBP-1 app or whatever it might be. So the CBP-1 app basically allows for around 1,700 people a day across the southern border to cross through the ports of entry in a so-called legal fashion. They're still not here legally, right? So it's an interesting one. It's kind of a numbers game, but they do allow that many people to come through the ports, and that's across the southern border. And the 10,000 is as well. So that number will go across. But when you look at December alone, I believe it was December 11th that I got these stats. We were looking at about 98,000 people that had entered into the United States in December alone in those first 11 days. When you compare that to November in the same time frame, we're about 81,000. So we're 15,000 plus more during this month at the same time versus November.
So you mentioned earlier about messaging. What is going on? I mean, where is the disconnect?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a national security issue. I just feel like it's, or at least a homeland security. I mean, on so many different levels. I cannot believe that this happens with such aloofness.
Yeah, and the messaging is a really big piece of it because like that Osama guy I was talking to from Morocco, they're like, we're here, we're going to work, we're going to be fine, we're going to have a place to live. I talked to men from Guinea who were saying we expect the federal government to help us with living, things like that. So the messaging, on one hand, DHS is saying illegal immigration is not allowed. The border's closed, we're not allowing this. But the reaction and what's happening is different because these people are being let into the country with a court date in 2027, right? So the messaging isn't really matching up. And they're trying to say, we don't accept economic migrants and things like that, but they're entering into the country with a court date that's 4 or 5 years away. Right. And then you have to deal with, they've established a life here by then. Yeah. They have children here by then. They if they show up for their court case and they say, number one, you have to go, I'm going to show up to my court hearing with a good chance I might be removed. And I've already established 4 years of my life here. That's number one. You have to be motivated to do that. Number two, you can always appeal it. So if they are denied their asylum claim, they can appeal it. And this process can take 10 years. It can take 15 years. So it is a long process, but the messaging is, it doesn't match up with the action. Right. And so I think that's where it gets lost. And then they talk about the CBP1 app. It's something that in Central America and in Mexico, there's kind of a GPS thing on it. You have to be in the vicinity kind of the southern border in order to actually get your appointment. And what's happening is a lot of these people are trying for months, a month or so, and they're not able to get it. So they go, well, I'm just going to go. And that is what two individuals that we met from, I believe they were from Honduras. That's what they said happened to them. They waited a month and 15 days, could not get a confirmed appointment. So they ended up walking through the brush on a private ranch, right? And so that's a problem. And the other issue is every single person I talked to from Africa had claimed that they had no idea what the CBP1 app was, but they all traversed through Mexico to get to our southern border. And so that messaging is getting lost, right? Because if there's this legal pathway that DHS says is there, why don't these people know about it? Why are they still coming through these holes in the wall? And so the messaging is certainly getting lost there. And a lot of times DHS will put stuff out on their websites and it's in English or just Spanish. Most of these people, and I don't speak good Spanish. I'm trying very hard, but then you go down to Lukeville, Arizona, and they speak French and Fula. So it's very difficult to communicate. And so you can only imagine that across the board, that messaging is going to be hard to translate as well.
Yeah. And why, I mean, from your point of view, why do you think more people aren't sounding the alarm? I mean, what is it about the media that is it just because it's this political divide? They want to make it political because, I mean, this is a problem for our entire country.
I think a lot of it is just the humanity of it, right? It's that I'm a Christian, and at my core, I see people, and I've literally watched people dying trying to get into our country. I've watched lifeless bodies pulled up on the shore in front of their children, resuscitated, and it is devastating. And there is a real humanitarian crisis along with the national security crisis. And I think there's a really big part of our populace that leans more into that humanitarian side and doesn't necessarily understand the long-term impacts of this, right? Doesn't understand what this will cost Americans, because at the end of the day, you look at New York Mayor Eric Adams, and the Biden administration is offering to give them $1.4 billion to help. And instead, 5 mayors got together and marched to Washington and said, no, we need $5 billion. And if you don't do something, we're going to need $12 billion. And that's federal money that they're asking for, which is the American taxpayer dollar, right? And so there's a long-term impact here. And there's also this impact that people don't seem to understand with the cost of all of this, this humanitarian side, because every administration has had some kind of processing and detention facility since DHS's inception, right? Border Patrol was created almost 100 years ago, but DHS was created because of 9/11 in response to that. So most administrations have had some kind of processing center that we've paid a baseline for, right? There's money allocated for national security. However, what's different right now is these NGOs, for example, Catholic Charities down in the Rio Grande Valley, when Title 42 was ending, they were allocated $13 million for that response. And that is federal money reimbursed through FEMA. And so they're paying for that. Then they're released into these so-called sanctuary cities or wherever, and the mayors are asking for federal money. And so Americans are paying for this 3 times over instead of just once right now. And so I'm not sure. I know that sometimes the messaging is controlled by the higher ups. For me, I have a lot of sources down here. I'm boots on the ground all the time. I see it with my own eyes. I don't trust people because I don't know if their video came from the 2019 surge under President Trump and it's going to come back to bite me in the rear, right? So I have to see it for myself. I have to understand what's happening. And I have very, very trusted sources. So I get to see all the statistics and everything that's going on. So I know what's going on, and I've been living it, and I've been devastated right there along with them. I had women fall into my arms crying because they were being gang raped in Mexico and they couldn't find their baby. It's absolutely devastating down here. And there is that reality of all of that. But I think part of our country kind of has blinders on to some of those things and just wants to say, give us your tired, give us your poor, like we're here because we're human, right? And Americans want to be that. They want to be human and they want to care about people. And I understand that fully. But this is going to have an impact long term on all of America. And most people say it's not sustainable. And When you had 241,000 people cross into the country last month alone, we're already, upwards of 100,000 for December. I don't know how to sustain that without having responsible conversations about it. And that's what I always try to do, is try to stay as reasonable as possible so that we can all come to the table and try to find a solution for everybody that works for everybody. And right now, this system isn't working for anybody except for the cartels.
Well, I will tell you one thing, why we turn a blind eye, and again, coming from the San Diego lens, is cheap labor. It's okay to turn a blind eye because I can pay my landscaper or my housekeeper or whoever it may be cash, and it's at a much cheaper rate.
Right. But here's the thing. I actually had a conversation with snowbirds when I was down in Tubac, Arizona, and they were from Michigan. And they were saying, well, we need more immigrants because no one's up there picking our crops. That's a quote from them.
Mhm.
And I said, well, they're here, ma'am. We had 241,000 people enter the country. Said the thing is when they do get work permits or when they're working, nothing stipulates where they're working or what jobs they're taking, and especially if they have a legal permit. And I asked her, I said, what would you rather do? Be out picking pecans, or would you rather be driving Uber or Spark? And, and she was like, well, you're right. And that's the reality, right? There's nothing that says you have to do the worst job possible in America. And now, obviously, working under the table, working in an illegal capacity, that's a little bit different. They are going to be doing more of those jobs that you were talking about. But when it comes to the individuals who are coming here and are getting work permits, because that is happening, nothing says you have to go out and pick stuff out of the fields and clean people's houses. And so, yes, there are people that are falling in line with that cheap labor space, but there's a lot of people that right now are taking jobs that college kids and moms that are, working from home, or single moms or dads or whatever that they want to work. And there's been a lot of complaints in that space as well. But it all comes down to the validity of that work permit there. How long can you keep someone desperate? They want to work. They're here to work. They're saying they're here to work. And it's very different. I think it's ignorant to act like, this is absolutely blowing up right now. Yes, we have a higher level of illegal immigration than ever right now, but we have ebbs and flows. Every decade, we see about 1 million people cross. Under Obama, we saw a huge spike. We saw over 900,000 under Trump during 1 year. So we do see a massive influx about every decade or so, or every couple of years. And the difference right now is during that time, you would get a lot of single adults who were coming over for 6-month increments or whatever it might be, sending money home, going back and forth. Right now, we're seeing families. We're seeing people who need things. We're seeing people who are relying on America for help. Now, the reason that they're here, that's not for me to judge. That's for a judge to determine. But what they need is very vastly different from what we've seen in the past, in the large influx of illegal immigration in the past. Again, single adult men kind of flying under the radar, doing their own thing. They're not necessarily using the medical services. They're not putting their kids in schools. They're not using the food banks and things like that. Like, Yuma has seen a huge uptick in people seeking residency there so that they can actually access the food banks. And so those things are vastly different. And I think that that's what America kind of needs to understand too, is the demographic of people that's coming and the needs right now are very different than they were 10 years ago.
So you've been doing this for 2.5 years. What is your goal? As you say, boots on ground. I love that term. I'm ex-military. Let's go. But so what is your goal in this journey and reporting?
Well, as a journalist, my goal is always to be a voice for those that don't have one. That includes immigrants and the law enforcement down here. Border Patrol isn't really allowed to say much and allowed to talk. So a lot of my sources, they'll text me on a Saturday or, at any given time in the day. And, it's important to me that they're putting their pension on the line, just talking to me and explaining something that's happening in their space. So I've kind of stuck around in part because of that, because and the migrants will reach out to me too. I give every single one of them if they speak English, especially because my Spanish is very poor. But people that I've had conversations with, I give them my card. I tell them straight up, I cannot help you legally with your case. I can tell your story. I can help get the word out about what you're going through and what your process is like. And a lot of them will reach out and call me. I've stayed connected to a lot of them. So it's not that I just do this to, hammer on the legal side of it. Our laws being broken. Yeah. But again, under this administration, this stuff is being allowed. What we're seeing is being allowed. And so the other thing, my goal has always been and always maintained, and the reason why I took the job with NewsNation is, and why I'm so proud to work with NewsNation, is because we have been able to maintain a space where we have been in the middle, where we have surveys have come out. We have been one of the only entities that has been able to stay pretty much unbiased in this space. And so to be able to have conversations like this, to be able to be on NewsNation that reaches both sides of the aisle, that is the goal. That is the goal, to get people to hear it that otherwise wouldn't. I have friends that work at, far right wing entities. And I'm like, man, you're pouring gasoline on a fire. You're dividing the nation. I love my country so very much. I want to have sensible and reasonable conversations that are responsible, that can potentially shed light on things that are problems that can be changed. I'm not sitting here going, I'm out for a solution, because I frankly don't know what a solution is, but shedding light on things and allowing both sides to see it in an unbiased way, just fact-based. I don't know how to sensationalize things. I really don't. I'm a black and white person. My stuff oftentimes is boring. The videos are great, but my writing's pretty boring because I'm fact-based. I'm pretty black and white when it comes to, here's the stats, here's what you need to know. And so my goal has always just been, to stay in the middle and to reach the people that otherwise wouldn't hear this. I get called a xenophobe and a sympathizer every day, and that's how I know I'm doing my job.
Well, I got to tell you, what do you say to someone like me who, I'm not going to lie, this makes me angry as a citizen of the U.S. and a taxpayer and someone who served our country. And I feel it's so dysfunctional, and it makes me upset. So what do you just say to someone like me?
What I tell everybody, I say, if it upsets you, vote different, write to your congressman, be a voice in that space. Again, I don't ever condone dividing our nation, because I love my country and I've seen people literally almost losing their life trying to be here. And if it doesn't bother you, then please educate yourself a little bit more. Please seek out sources that are showing you videos in real time, that are sharing real statistics and real information that aren't inflated. Seek out sources like myself and Jorge at NewsNation, because we work really, really hard to have these responsible conversations and to provide facts and to not stoke the fire, right? We need to come together, not be more divided on this issue. And I understand the frustrations. I see it on both sides. I see the left side, wanting this to be more humane. But I also get very frustrated because a lot of people on the left say even my work is right-wing propaganda, while I'm sitting there in a culvert for 4 hours staking out the criminal cartels who are cutting holes in our wall and mocking me and blowing kisses at me and flexing through the holes in our wall. And I'm risking, and people say, oh, how were you unsafe? How are you risking your safety? Number one, when I'm down there, Border Patrol always tells me you're on your own. You don't have people around you. I'm not down there with security or people around me. So when I'm down there, I'm looking for the truth. I'm trying to figure it out. It is the farthest thing from right-wing propaganda. It is facts. It is truth. It is happening in real time. And if people choose to have their head in the sand, then that's their prerogative. Now, when it comes to, being able to get that word out, it's important to be able to have conversations with you guys. It's important to have conversations with real people every day that can spread that message and say, hey, follow these people because they're going to give you the truth, and I would encourage everybody to seek out multiple sources and compare things. When you read something on Instagram, don't just share it really quickly and get mad. Do some research, see the background of it, see where it came from. Because people have even taken my videos and ripped them as their own and put different headlines on it and stoked the fire, and there's missing context in a lot of that. And so I would encourage people to seek out unbiased sources. If you're a CNN fan, try to look at somebody else, try to look at somebody on the right and go, how is this so vastly different?
Yeah.
And what's going on? What's the disconnect? And if you, if you don't see any disconnect and you're fine with one side and being on one side or the other, then you have every right to do that. But again, as somebody who loves this country, and I would imagine you do too, because you've served, and thank you for your service, I would really encourage us to have more responsible conversations and to try to put emotions aside, because the only way we're going to make change is to come together. And that's just not happening right now. And I mean, we're seeing the Biden administration kind of pivot on some of these policies and considering some of these things that were tossed out on day one, right? And so it's interesting to see this kind of come full circle, but it's going to be really hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube on this one.
Yeah, I was thinking that because I know for so long, I mean, all we ever heard under Trump was about build the wall. And then, Biden came out saying absolutely not. And now it's back to,
Build the wall.
They're building some wall in Stark County, Texas, right? And a lot of people see my videos where people are jumping the wall, people are cutting the wall. And the first thing that everyone wants to say is, oh yeah, Trump's wall worked. Number one, Obama had a wall, Bush had a wall, Trump had a wall. This isn't new under Trump. The little 18-footer that they're jumping over in Naco was put in there under Obama. So walls have been a thing under many administrations. The second thing here, saying walls don't work. Well, if you have a nail and you don't have a hammer, the nail's pretty useless. You need technology. This is coming from Border Patrol. You need technology. Then you need Border Patrol to be able to watch that technology. You need Border Patrol to respond to that technology. And you don't have that. So having a wall in the middle of nowhere isn't going to be that useful, right? And having a lack of agents, a lack of personnel is going to be a detriment. And, we're about to come into a big wave of retired Border Patrol agents because the Bush era administration hired 10,000 agents after 9/11. There was a huge surge, and those guys, most of them are coming up for retirement in the next 2 years. So whoever is in the next administration, whoever is running our country, is going to have a task not only with all of the people and all the backlog cases and all of the issues, but they're going to have a personnel problem too. And that's not just Border Patrol. As you guys know, law enforcement as a whole is struggling. Military as a whole is struggling because a lot of those roles, they're generational, right? You sit around the dinner table and you encourage your family members or your nephew to join Border Patrol. Right now, they don't want their family members to join Border Patrol because it's not the national security job and role that they signed up for. Right now, they're processing and transporting people. I watched HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigation special agents, being used to put backpacks in the back of a truck in Lukeville, Arizona. Those people are the ones who usually go after child traffickers and stash houses and drug runners. And they're putting backpacks in trucks right now. That's not necessarily what they signed up for, right? Their jobs have changed pretty wildly over the last couple of years. And so they're not encouraging their family members to get involved in this role. So I think they're going to struggle in the coming administration.
Yeah. Okay. This has been mind blowing. And you're so articulate. I mean, it's obvious how passionate you are and how knowledgeable and in depth, and just it's obvious that you are there all the time. So for those that are feeling kind of like me, where we asked about the solution and you kind of said, I don't know what the solution is, that feeling of we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic on this one.
Well, and and when we talk about the
silver lining for us, give us a silver lining.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you ask about a solution, and while there isn't one, like I said, a paintbrush that can go along the southern border and fix everything, and I don't ever give my opinion. I give what I know from Border Patrol, from law enforcement, from people that are working on the front lines. And what they all tell me is that if they enforce Title VIII, as it is on the books, that's the removal authority that was in place well before Title 42 was in place. That was the premier removal authority. If they enforce Title VIII, then things would change. What's happening right now under Title VIII is DHS Secretary Mayorkas says these people are being put in removal proceedings. They end up with an NTA 4 years down the road, right? So that's what most people believe down here is a start. Enforcing the law as it is on the books, not kind of finding these loopholes and these asylum loopholes. And so I would say that would be a start, to be able to enforce that law. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Honestly, I don't know what a silver lining is. I'm still down here because it's still a problem. And if it wasn't a problem, I'd be able to go home. And that's just not the case. It's hard work down here. It's an impossible beat. Nobody wants to do it. That's why there's only a handful of us doing it. And I wish that I could say that's the fix, but I don't know what it is. It's hard. It's hard. And I will say I do lose sleep at night because I don't know the answers. And I know that there's a lot of people that have come into our country that shouldn't be here. I'm not talking about the ones that self-surrender. I'm not in a space to judge. They're going to go through an adjudication process, and that's not through Allie Bradley. But the 600,000 plus people that got away last year alone, the 1.7 million that got away under this administration, that is concerning. And I don't know what the solution is to that. More agents, but if you can't get agents to sign up, what do? Right now they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. One sector is busy, so they grab people from the coastal or the northern sector, and the northern sector has some 500% increase or something over last year because they have people coming in through the northern border. And so I don't want to say the word chaos, but it feels chaotic at times down here. And, a lot of people say, oh, it's not unsafe and this and that, but there are times and places where it is. And that's a reality. And it's kind of naive to think that it's not. When I'm face to face with human smugglers who are summoning me over to the wall, that was one of the first times I thought I might be hurt, because for the most part, I trust my gut and I go after what I need to go after so I can get the facts. But I don't know the answer to the problem, and it's frustrating. And I keep coming down here and sharing stuff and hoping someone finds one.
I think the thing, Allie, is that you're bringing awareness. I mean, that just the fact of what you're doing, you are courageous. You're a warrior. You're out there doing what most people don't want to do. And I think, when I came across, I found you on Instagram and I was so taken by the work that you're doing. And I was like, wow, we need to get her on the podcast. We need to help spread her message. So, don't sell yourself short at all on being able to, because you may not have the exact solution, but the work you're doing is incredible.
Thank you. And we've had a lot of our stuff that we've been able to cover has been used in congressional hearings. I just found out that some of my reporting in Lukeville has been used even in ICE intel. It's circulating within agents. They're like, hey, your stuff made it into our intel. So, people are seeing it and are seeing a different side of it. And like I said, that's always been the goal, is to get as many people to see it as possible and get as many people to try. It's impossible to understand, but just try to give it a moment to figure out where you fall with it, and to just go, well, it doesn't impact me. We can't be there anymore, right? We've been saying at NewsNation, every state's a border state for quite a while, because that comes from law enforcement and from lawmakers and from people in communities like Montana that have a massive fentanyl problem, right? Every state is a border state. And so to say, and even my friends will be like, what are you doing? Like, we don't even get it because it doesn't impact us. Like, why are you killing yourself for this? And I'm like, it does impact you. You just don't feel it yet. You just don't know yet. And you don't know why inflation is happening, why we're spending so much more money on things. Well, I just told you, we're paying 3 times over for that. And then, we're spending a lot of money on this situation. And it will impact all of us in some way, shape, or form. And I hope the only way it impacts us is financially.
Wow. Well, huge thank you to you for putting the work in, and huge thank you for you sharing it with us today. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. Well, before you go, we always like to end on a little fun. Are you game?
Okay, let's do it. Let me change my mood so I'm not in borderland.
Right? let's do this. And before we do that, let's tell everyone where they can find you and your content, because it's really powerful. I went on your Instagram and I must have watched every video. It's good stuff. So
crazy though, right? It's crazy to watch those cartel guys jumping on the wire trying to. It's crazy. You need to go to my Instagram. So Allie Bradley TV across all social media platforms. But if you want to see our fleshed out stories and the content that we put together, newsnationnow.com is where you can find all of that. There is a full border section. And we also partner with Border Report. So we have other content as well. That's not just coming from myself and my colleague Jorge. It's coming from another entity. So that's pretty cool that you have a couple of different sources right at NewsNation that you can grab from. So those are a few of the places that you can find me. But I would say that I'm most active on X, formerly Twitter. And that's Allie Bradley TV as well. It's just easier to kick out content really quickly there, and not have a full on thought process like you would on some of these other platforms. So I'm always updating my X platform.
Awesome. All right, gang, lean in. Okay. So here we go. This is the luxury pickleball lightning round. How fun does that sound? Okay.
Really fun, but I've never played pickleball.
Well, yeah.
Either. I know.
Okay. Okay, we can still be friends. It's okay.
I shake my head because I've been trying desperately to reel in Michelle and to no avail.
Not
You
yet.
sound like my sister trying to get me to do high fitness, girl. It ain't gonna happen.
Okay, first question, and this is to give the audience a different glimpse of Allie Bradley.
Okay.
Where is your happy place?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have two. I would say Oso, Washington, where my mom lives, is she lives in my pop's old house, and they have a bunch of acreage in the middle of a forest, and there's a little creek that runs through it, and it's just quiet. It's on a private road. It's beautiful. It's lovely. It's a house with a wood stove. Those are like happy moments for me. And then the other place is actually crazy, but Del Rio, Texas. I stay at my Del Rio family's house out on the lake there. And after I get off of doing all of this crazy chaos, I get to go there and kind of have solace. And the deer come out and I feed them animal crackers and throw, corn for them. And they literally eat out of your hand. And I feel like a real life Snow White out there. But it is one of those things where I just get a little break from reality. And those two places, they're just like soul food. I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I feel safe and at peace. And I'd say those are my safe, happy place. I had safe into happy place, I guess, because I have a lot of chaos in my life.
Absolutely. Okay. Next question. If you could sit next to anyone on an airplane, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I need to say like a really famous person, but I miss my grandma so much. I would probably sit next to my grandma Loopy. I lost her when I was 10 years old to cancer. And it still feels like yesterday. And I just have so many questions for her. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional. It makes me sad. But I wish I could tell her all this, and if my pop-up who passed away 2 years ago, if I could have both of them on either side and just be like, guys, you won't believe this. That would be pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Oh man, I love that.
Same.
Wow.
I know I should say like someone really profound, but I just, I'm a family person, and like my heart is just with my family 100% through and through. And I think I can read a lot about other things, and just to be able to have a couple more moments with them would be really neat.
Amen. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, make me happy again.
This is a good one. Do you believe there's aliens?
Oh.
Not the illegal aliens.
Okay. Do I believe there's like legitimate green guys like, hi, we come in peace? No. Do I believe like Matthew McConaughey's Interstellar movie where someone like got sucked into a black hole and showed up like 100 years later and was like, what the heck? I don't know. But I'm also a Christian, and I just don't really know that space very well. And I kind of haven't delved into it, nor have I allowed myself to entertain it very much, because I don't think that aliens are in the Bible.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't really believe it. I mean, I think our government has literally said, yeah, they're a real thing. And America was kind of like, nah, we got a lot of other stuff going on. Cool. Yeah. The aliens like don't even want to come to the planet anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a fun one because it should evoke memory. Favorite concert?
Favorite concert. Oh my gosh. I just have to go to my first concert then at the Gorge at George when Gwen Stefani was still with No Doubt. That girl was chingona, which means, excuse my language, badass in Spanish. She was running all over the stage. She was climbing on the rafters, doing all this stuff. And I'm like 14. And I just thought that was so cool. And it was to see a woman that was just so powerful in that space was really cool. And I think that had an impact on my life and where I'm at now too, in a weird way.
Okay.
Love Gwen.
But I did like Brooks and Dunn also at the Gorge. That was pretty cool too. drove my Firebird with the T-tops on an 86 Firebird. My friend and I went over to the gorge. It's like a 4-hour drive. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. I'm loving this. Allie.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, final one, and it's a little bit more thought-provoking, which I know you can handle because you're so smart.
I don't know, girl. I'm on 2 5-hour energies today.
Wow.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know what you're like with the full like sleep, 12-hour sleep mode. I mean,
we'll have to revisit.
Keep up with, yeah. Okay, if you could tell your younger self something that you know today, what would it be?
Don't take advice from people that you don't respect. Why do we care so much about the opinions of others? I try really hard to live as closely, in the walk with Jesus as I possibly can. And if I'm doing that, then I'm doing something right. And that's all you really need. All of the other noise and all of the things that we inevitably are going to get into, like social media and all of those things. Stay true to yourself. You know your God-guided path and stick with that because you can't go wrong.
Excellent. I know that's kind of been a consistent thing, right? With our guest is this is kind of keeping your eyes focused on what's true and real.
Yeah, it's hard to I question myself a lot, like if I'm enough, that's kind of some of my narrative. I think that's a lot of my generation's narrative. And we get beat down a lot on social media. We all do, right? And it's from complete strangers. I get a lot of really nasty messages and some of them really hurt and I let them get to me. And I wish that as a younger person, I didn't have that I didn't have that growing into me. You know what I mean? That I didn't have that where I could go, I don't care. I do care. It bothers me, but I try really hard to focus on the positive things. I have good people in my corner that I work with. My friend Cynthia, who is listening in, she's one of those people that checks in with me every day and is like, you're a rock star, girl. And those things are what helps me and keeps me going. And I try to just drown out that noise because it's inevitable. It doesn't matter what space you're in. There's mean people. Mean people suck, and the world is full of them. And it's like, unless they're your family, and even if they're your family, snip, snip, if they're really terrible, I guess, but you only get one family. All the rest of the people are noise and it's nonsense, and social media has really taken a toll on all of us, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You are a boss.
Yes. Thank you.
So are you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it. And we can't wait to get the message out. And just thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing it. You're a badass. You're a rock star.
Yeah.
Chingona.
Right? Yeah. So
we'll have to do this again. We'll have to have a follow-up because I don't like to just set things and forget them. I like to go, have things gotten better? Have things gotten worse? What's in play now? And what has changed? So let's revisit so we can have another conversation about what's changed.
Yeah, that's a great idea because typically what happens, especially in our genre of audience, because we're 40 to 60-year-old women, right? Mm-hmm. Is that we listen and then we get to talking in our groups. And so I will be very interested to get the feedback from the audience and give that to you. There might be a whole new set of questions that arise. Sorry,
I'm open for the challenge and I welcome it. Let's do it. So compile the questions, guys, and let's have continued conversations on this because unfortunately, as I mentioned, I don't really know a solution and I don't really see one coming anytime really in the super near future. I think people are going to keep coming to our country for a little while.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Allie and Michelle.
Guys.
Good to see your face too today.
Always.
Right. And until next time, thank you, audience.
Are you looking for high-end pickleball equipment, attire, or even a luxe pickleball vacation? Introducing Luxury Pickleball, the curator of all products and experiences for your social or competitive pickleballer. Paddles, attire, accessories, and quality life experiences wherever you travel with your paddle. Use discount code SHE'S10. That's SHE'S10 for 20% off for quality on and off the court. Let's go.
Follow us on Instagram at She's a 10 times 5. You can click on the link in our bio to listen to all of our previous episodes, as well as check out our live video interviews over our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, pretty much wherever else you decide to listen to your favorite podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe.